Okay, it was only sprint qualifying on Friday night in Doha, Qatar. And of course, the battle for the Drivers' Championship is now over. Max has secured his fourth Drivers' World Championship. But nonetheless, there were some interesting trends in the evening desert air. Quite cool it was too, as a result of which I guess you could say Mercedes again in that sweet spot. Lots of grip and balance on the Mercedes. Not too bad in a straight line as well. George Russell going really well. Lewis Hamilton, well, we'll get down to him a little bit further on into this video. The other trends were McLaren right back where we've seen them in recent times, but not in Vegas. But lots of medium and high-speed corners here, really good around there. Lando Norris putting in a lap that I suspect very few other drivers could have done in that car. Really, really good, right on the edge everywhere, just ahead of Oscar Piastri. Not an easy thing to do in a very, very good car. And Lando looking very relaxed, looking actually like a guy who's a bit relieved that it's all over, that he can't win the championship. I'm sure that's not the case. Certainly my take on it is when you see Lando driving this well, you see the McLaren this good, it is a crying shame that the championship is over, because this is the Lando we've been watching most of the summer. And as I say, he's minus about 37 points that he should have been taking into these final races. So for me, it's a bit of a shame to see that. But on the other side of the coin, just taking it for what it is, a beautiful lap by Lando Norris. It never really looked as if the pole for this sprint race was in doubt. Lando started with a 21.3, 21.2 on the medium tyres in SQ1, SQ2, and then put it down to a 21.0 on the soft tyre. Didn't even do a second run while everybody else was lining up to do their last run in SQ3, sprint qualifying 3. Lando was pulling into the pits and getting ready to go down to the weighing scales. Was that confidence? No, that was Lando basically saying, that's it, can't go any quicker, that is the lap. And indeed, it was the lap. George Russell got very, very close, but not close enough. So it's Lando on the pole from George Russell, ahead of Oscar Piastri, P3, who had one of his laps deleted, a little bit ragged, again, compared with Lando, had a bit under pressure to put in that lap time, but did a good job given that pressure. And Ferrari's fourth and fifth, as we said in the build-up to this triple header, this was not going to be the best circuit for Ferraris. A lot of medium-speed corners that exercise the balance of the car. Well, not so much the balance, the grip level of the car that it can develop on these medium and high-speed corners. Ferrari much better at long straights, big stops, tight corners, acceleration runs. Here it was always going to be a little bit of a problem for them. And Charles also complaining of the tyres beginning to grain very quickly. Carlos Sainz under a lot of pressure because his first run in Q3 on the soft tyre was traffic. It was Max Verstappen, actually. A bit of swapping going on with Max Verstappen. If only he was going to be Max's teammate at Red Bull next year. And also very close to Charles Leclerc on his first runs. And he was under pressure in the last few minutes of SQ3 to get in a lap. But he did, and he went quicker again than Charles Leclerc, which will not have impressed Charles, that is for sure. On the other side of the coin, we had Lewis Hamilton, who now we're kind of getting accustomed to seeing 0.2, 0.3 away from George Russell. It wasn't as bad, obviously, as it was in Vegas when Lewis didn't get a lap in Q3 at all. Here he did get in a lap, but it was just an uncomfortable gap to George, which shows that it was just those fine details, or maybe it was just how much he lifted going through the left-hand kink, the second last corner of the lap on the downhill run. Maybe it was that. Maybe it's Lewis kind of signed off mentally. But it's interesting to compare them, isn't it? To compare Carlos Sainz, who in theory should be signing off mentally. Ferrari have basically sacked him after a very good year with the Scuderia. And he's driving for Williams next year, Williams-Mercedes, which is not the same as going to another front-running team as the way Lewis is. And yet it's interesting the way Carlos has approached these last few races, absolutely on it, out-qualifying his teammate, winning races, looking really good. Whereas Lewis Hamilton, on the other side of the fence, looks quite defeated at the moment. Early days, of course, in this weekend, let alone writing him off for the 2024 World Championship season as a whole, because we still have Abu Dhabi to come. But at the moment, every time George Russell goes out now, it looks like he is the quicker driver. And you can't say that about Carlos Sainz versus Charles Leclerc. And for his part, Max qualified sixth. No sign of him backing away. I think that's absolutely the limit of the Red Bull. And I think this is the final trend so far from sprint qualifying. And that is that this was going to be a bit of a litmus test to see where Red Bull really are in terms of the upgrades they brought to this last part of the season. Mexico was a mess. Brazil was brilliant, but it was wet, and it was Max Verstappen territory on a real driver's circuit. And then we went to Vegas, which is big stops from high speed. Now we're back on a proper racetrack with real corners. And again, you got to say Red Bull really struggling to be living with McLaren, and to some extent, given the way the tyres are working now on the Mercedes as well. And I think Red Bull will be disappointed with this based on where they are in terms of medium speed corners and grip and therefore balance. They played around quite a lot with wing settings on the Red Bull. In the end, he was quite quick in a straight line. Indeed, in Sector 3, Max was good. That's the pit straight and obviously the run down the hill as well. But through those telling medium speed corners in the middle of the lap, to some extent the beginning of the back end of Sector 1, the Red Bull not in the same class as the McLaren in terms of overall grip. You couldn't really see a lot of difference in terms of balance and what Max was actually doing with the car. But in terms of overall grip, it just wasn't there in the McLaren class. Or you got to say in the Mercedes class, even though Max did out-qualify Sir Lewis Hamilton. Final 3 in the top 10. Pierre Gasly, very good in the Alpine Renault again. Nico Hülkenberg finishing the season with a bit of a flourish for Haas Ferrari, and hasn't that team done well this year? And finally, Liam Lawson doing a very good job as well. Yuki Tsunoda very unhappy, of course, in the other car, didn't get out of Q1. And they said something like, yeah, we're listening to you, Yuki. And he said something back like, yeah, but you're not listening to me. You're not listening to me. Again, unnecessary to have that sort of dirty linen washing, I think, on the radio. But anyway, that's the way he is. And I don't think he'll ever change at this stage. Let's have a look now at some of the drivers who didn't get out of SQ1. Sergio Perez blaming traffic, particularly Charles Leclerc. Don't know what Charles was up to. Well, I think it's a bit rich to be blaming Charles Leclerc, to be honest. Yuki Tsunoda, as I mentioned. Esteban Ocon, the other Alpine, Guanyu Zhou, and Franco Colapinto, who never really looked in it, I have to say, didn't look great on this circuit out of the box. And SQ2, Fernando Alonso just failed to make it. Interesting, he and Lance Stroll in the other Aston Martin, who wasn't that far behind Fernando on this occasion. The only team that I could see taking 8th gear going into the long right-hander at the top of the hill towards the end of the lap before they go downhill through that kink. Looked nice, but I think they were quite quick there, actually. But overall, just lacking grip on the Aston Martin. Alex Albon failed to make it. Valtteri Bottas had done a very good job, actually, I thought, in the Sauber to get through into SQ2. Also failed to make it into SQ3, and Kevin Magnussen as well. Anyway, there we go. We'll see how we go tomorrow. Thanks to Jetcraft, to OEM Exclusive, and to TrackNinja, and of course, to you, the viewers, for watching. See you tomorrow.